I'm Darren Styles.
And I'm Mark Breeze.
And welcome to Breeze's studio.
We've probably been known before for making hardcore tracks as You're Shining and Heartbeats and You're My Angel. And
I've written some stuff previously as Force and Styles, and obviously Styles and Breeze and Darren Styles, and some of the Ultra Beat stuff, Pretty Green Eyes, Feeling Fine. So yeah, but this is going to be a bit about one of the newest hardcore tracks we've done recently.
yes, a track that we've signed to all around the world records, and it's a hardcore mix of it. And we'll take you step by step through what we've done and how we produce our tracks.
Some of you, by the way, may recognise it because it is actually a cover. It's a German track, isn't it?
Yes, Alex C track.
Alex C track. It's originally a commercial track, but it didn't really make it over here, so we sort of picked up on it. It's got a great sort of vocal hook. It's not really a verse in there, it's just like a hook, a main hook, and then we've sort of put the riff in, pumped it up to 170 BPMs, quite stomping, and should we give them a run through?
Yeah.
This is basically our drum track with just a simple offbeat bass running. So if we talk you through a little bit of how we get our drums, how we process them and put them together, and the offbeat, because the offbeat and the kick, especially in hardcore and dance music in general, is really, really important. Sort of the marriage between the bottom end of the kick and the warmth of the bass.
And the punch of the kick. Yeah. Most of the samples we use as clean as possible before we do it, rather than lift off vinyl and get all that background noise and have to deal and worry about all that. We'll go to which is our favourite library at the moment, Vengeance.
You just can't go wrong with the Vengeance.
They've been processed, they sound good, so get them in there, make the track sound good, and then manipulate them in the way they have to be.
It's quite chuggy. Basically what we've done on that is we've put a chopper on it, just so that it gives it some definition. If you take the chopper off, you can hear that it's a lot more wishy-washy. It's got that, what we call sort of a frying pan noise. It's got that that's a little trick that we use, is just to put a chopper on it.
Just to give it that,
gives it that
shuffle
skip.
and skip. Yeah.
And when it's in with everything else, it works with the open hat and everything. It gives it that real sort of chug, especially in hardcore and the sort of stuff that we do. Some tracks you listen to and they're just so wide, and you just think, without a plug-in, how do you get your mixes sounding so wide? Obviously there's panning of drums, but we've never really panned kick drums before, because the kick drum's always dead centre. But on this particular track, it's
sometimes when we get a remix project over and you look at their production and what they've done, and they've panned theirs, and it's just one of them things we thought we'd try out and see. It's exactly the same kick, but panned one pan left, one pan right. We do put a lot of stuff straight into the arrangement page as audio files now, and recycle them inside Cubase 4. So our loop here, we've got that in there, obviously with the chopper on it, but as you see as an audio file, it's just, we've cut it and manipulated it to get it in time, and then obviously copied the bars over.
It's actually only been recently that we've sort of been using more audio with drums, because literally in the last 6 months, because we were mainly using Contact, weren't we?
Yeah.
And all the drums were in Contact, which is still a great tool to use, but we just found that using audio is, if you've got a clean sample, it just keeps it clean, and it just, I don't know, it just sounds warmer to us.
Yeah.
So we've been going with the audio on the drums.
So likewise with the open hat, we've put that in from a Vengeance open hat. Obviously put it to where it's got to go, copied and bounced it down. Same with the Bride. Okay, so obviously there's a compression just to tighten it up on the off hat there, with a slight bit of EQ around about 5k. Is that 5k or 2k? Around about 2k. Just to give it a bit of mid to come through, rather than it all sounding hi-fi at the end of the mix. Ride is pretty straight, it's flat there. We haven't even taken the bottom off that, because the samples are clean enough from the CD to keep them as they should be.
The good thing about the Vengeance samples is that they've been processed before, and there's loads of things you can do to them to make them sound different. But in this style of music, it's nice to if it sounds wrong, that to us there's no point in trying to tweak it to get it right. Just keep going through the pack until you find one that sounds right.
Yeah, they say there's a law that if you haven't got the right sound in there,
we used to do our own heads in with kick drums. You'd sit there with a kick drum and you'd put a bit of bottom on it, and you'd shelf this and you'd do that, and it's all very well trying to do that, but really and truly, you've got the wrong kick for the track. Just keep going until you find the right kick, and it will work. you know, it should really need a minimal amount of EQ.
Moving on to snare patterns, here we've got a normal type of just a normal snare pattern.
Bit of a gated reverb on the end of that.
Yeah, gated reverb, there's the pattern there.
The gated reverb just gives it that sort of European, German sort of
back sort
edge.
of sound.
Just you know, makes the reverb suck out, and it really works.
For that, we're using Nexus for our snare drum, and in there we've just used the snares patches. Yet again, same thing. Nice clean sounds in there. Don't have to process them. Actually, I'm using a Neve compressor on there as well as a T-Rex compressor. One was giving it sort of a sizzle, and the other one's giving it sort of like the punch. Just gives it that little bit of sparkly edge on it. If I take that off, you'll sort of, it's dulled itself out.
Yeah,
so.
just gives it that, gives it the attack.
Okay, we are using contact for the bass here. I think we're using a layer of two things here. One's Nexus doing the lower end of the bass, and then up top we've got the sample we're using here, which is a grindy sort of noise over the top.
Gives it a buzz.
Yeah, so obviously soloed that's. Even there we've actually got the volume turned up quite a lot just to give it a little bit of distortion on the end as well, just to make it that a little bit more buzzy. We don't worry too much about whether things clip a little bit or not. If they sound good, they sound good. Leave them as they are.
The thing is, what we found is you can read up on so much stuff, but it's so important to go by your own ear. I mean, it's a learning curve, you know. I'm not saying that straight away. You know, we've been doing this for sort of 15 years, and you listen to some of our mix downs 15 years ago, and they're absolutely abysmal.
We won't even listen to.
And in 15 years' time, if we're still doing it, we'll look at these and think these are abysmal. But it's, you know, the whole thing is a learning process, and it's knowing whether or not you need to compress something, or does it sound right as it is, or will the compression just give it that little extra edge. Like with the bass, you know, some people just use one bass and they're happy with that, but just adding that extra bass over the top and maybe doing a low cut on it and giving it a little bit of distortion, and you know, it's ever so slightly in the mix, but it just gives it that little extra. But they're all little things you find as you go along.
Yeah, I think sometimes with even with riffs and that, you think you're hearing something you're not quite, and it's because there's 2 or 3 sounds all layered up, and they're all got their own little level, and they all make that one big round sound, rather than you just going, that's the patch for me and it works.
Okay, this is a bass out of Nexus. This is the one for us that gives it the warmth, the one that really works with the kick drum. Like I said before, it's so important in dance music, and especially in hardcore as well, to get the mix right between the kick drum and the bass, because if you don't, when you're on the dance floor, you only hear the kick or you only feel the bass. You can notice it. They don't dance the same. You've got to get it right so that it gives it that bounce on the dance floor. And this particular one is a tech bass out of again the Nexus plugin. It's completely dry. It's, you know, when you open up the plugin, it comes with a little bit of delay and a little bit of reverb on it. But we tend to take that off on the bass just so that it doesn't mess it up in any way. And then that's the main one that gives it the warmth anyway, before we put the dirty one over the top.
We would find sometimes that if we was using that bass in, say, a commercial track at 142 or 146, we might have a little bit of delay or a bit of reverb just to fill the space. But at hardcore, being at 170, it's very tight, and you need to get that punch through and everything. So you don't want to mess the mix up with all these other things going on when you've got so much to put in a hardcore track.
I'm going to talk about the riffs now. Before we actually get to the sounds we've used and whatnot, we've actually put a bit of a sidechain on this riff, and it's actually the first time we've ever done it on a hardcore track, isn't it? Yeah. On the actual riff. It's not really noticeable, but it does give it that extra edge. When you play it out, you can hear it pump, and it gives it something. You know, like Mark was saying earlier, when on the 170 style of track, you don't need to fill it up with loads of effects and loads of different clever bits, because the pace, you know, it's all about the pace and the separation. But this actually gives it something with the sidechain. That is just flat, obviously, without the sidechain. So this one is off the Silength plugin. I mean, it's quite a universal sound really. That kind of sounds like the commerce sound that you get off most synths, whether it's the Virus or or Nexus, and the layer, the sort of grimy layer, is that one. It's a lead noise off of Nexus, and it's out of the hardstyle pack.
We've put another kick drum onto the sidechain channel, and then applied this plug-in here, and then we're now making this kick drum operate this sidechain over the top of the riffs. So we basically put the plug-in on the riffs, so we should get a ducking effect now on top of the riffs. So that'll help our normal kick breathe through better. So it's obviously not too drastic there, but I can adjust it, and you'll see the sort of duck effect you get on it. And that'll then in turn make the riff breathe through when the kick's not playing in the track, so you can get the punch.
So it kind of sucks out on the offbeat, but
Yeah.
like we said earlier, because of the pace of the track, you don't want to sort of flood it.
No.
Because this particular riff obviously is on the dun dun dun, so it's on the beat, so you need those notes to cut through. So
Yeah.
that's why we've only put it on ever so slightly.
You can kind of see here that we're just triggering it into and just ducking the top of the riff over the kick.
Take you through the breakdown, what we usually call breakdown in the track. It's commonplace in hardcore to have sort of a nice stringy breakdown with a vocal, maybe a little bit of piano, and basically before the madness of the riff and the kick comes back in. This is quite anthemic, I think, with this. It's really smooth,
Lush
strings, again out of Nexus. They're almost orchestral, and then we add actually a cello sound over the top, so it does give it the orchestralness, because often in hardcore it's very trancey and very floaty, but recently some of the more live real sounds have sort of come in over the top just to give it a different edge. So together it gives a real, nice orchestral lush sound really. Underneath we've put an art bass, which is literally just a running bass,
just to keep it the rhythm.
just to keep a rhythm, because it's quite a long breakdown, and it's nice to keep something going, so they're not just standing on the dance floor waiting for something to happen. That sort of keeps the momentum going. It's like so.
I think we've actually used an old school breakbeat there. We've chopped up as, is it a drum and bass breakbeat? I think we used on that, chopped it up.
Again, in the breakdown, it keeps the momentum going, so they're not losing interest. And then we'll come on to the vocal in a minute, but there's a section where we've literally just copied the melody of the vocal with a piano. And together it all sounds quite big and wide and lush. And then the next section is where the vocal comes in.
We'll go through the vocal part now. Basically we've put the original recording in at the top, and then copied the track down, and we're using a studio chorus on there, just to give it that width and widen it up a little bit. We're using the studio chorus, which is a Cubase 4 plugin, and we've just put a chorus fat preset on there. So you see layers like this. So with it off, it sort of sounds right, sort of kind of in the middle. But as soon as
It's quite a thin vocal. There's not really much substance to it, so it needed thickening and widening. So it just gave it a bit, because it just sounded like it was coming from there as opposed to coming from there. And the thing is, because the string section is so wide, you didn't want just this massive string section out there and then a vocal just sitting right in the middle somewhere. It just needed to be spread as well. So that's why we've put the chorus on it.
Amigos forever and ever we will be.
And then down to we bus our vocals normally to a one master bus. Basically on there we're using compression, EQ, and a couple of different delays on there just to give it the feel in between, and a tad of reverb on there. So we go through the harmony on the vocal there.
It's just a small section on the chorus part.
Forever you and me, amigos.
And together with the main hook.
Be forever you and me, amigos.
It's funny because in hardcore it used to be so minimal with the vocal, but these days, you know, what with production, you know, moving on all the time, it's important to get your harmonies in and really take a bit more care of your vocals, really, because at the end of the day, it's you know, it's hardcore music is very song based. It is for us anyway. So it's a major part of our tracks. So by adding things like harmonies and the reverse reverbs that you just heard there at the end.
Be forever you and me, amigos, amigos.
Just makes it sound more polished, and rather than just being the deadpan vocal.
We tend to leave even the breathing in the vocal, just to give it that natural feel as well, rather than editing all these bits out. So basically the intro is DJ friendly, starting here.
This is what we would call the extended mix. Nice and easy to mix in if you're a DJ. Just builds up nicely. And then if you're a DJ now, obviously you drop it in your mix properly. Crowd go mad.
Just on the front there, we're using the Virus TI to do that kind of acid sort of noise.
I think it's got extra distortion plugins on that.
Yeah, I think we have put a load of things on that actually. Yeah, on there we're using a Quadra Fuzz, a bit of harsh EQ. You wouldn't normally see things that harshly EQ'd that we've done, but for this sort of sound, to give it that.
Just
Horrible
cuts
noise.
through all the drums, and especially when you are mixing, you have to bear in mind that at this part of the track, stage of the track, when you're DJing, there's another track below it because you're mixing out of that one and into this one. So you need, if you're going to use a riff like this, you need something that's going to be full of mids and high mids like that, so it really cuts through, so you can hear it.
Recognise what the tune is. That's coming
Yeah,
in.
exactly. I mean that's the idea when you're DJing, that you want people's ears to know what track's coming in before the track drops.
Basically, this is all our DJ friendly intro part, and then we forward on to this is where the breakdown is. Nice lush little.
You can hear obviously, or I don't know if you can hear, but the arp bass is still underneath, so it's still giving it the pace, and then the loop comes in. So hopefully it's not boring basically by doing it that way. And then the piano drops in, follows the melody of the vocal. And now for the hands in the air. By doing that and putting the main vocal coming in second, gives it, you know, you're ready for it and you're waiting for it to come in, and then you anticipate the riff.
If you're not looping.
If you're not looping, that is.
So we'll have the riff now.
Coming under filter. Then it starts to build.
Again, the snares keeping the pace at the 170. So the bass comes in with a kick.
Nice and tough. Goes through. Invariably, the vocal will come back in. And then, usually towards the end of the vocal section, we'll come back in with a little DJ section.
Amigos Forever.
So the DJ can either choose to mix out of this section or just do some tricks, or if the MC wants to bubble over the top. This is usually the section where the record's quite new. No one will mix out of this because they want to get both breakdowns in. But if it was say 6 to 12 months old, you'd be mixed out by now. And then back in with the vocal. This time around, everything's shortened.
We've even brought a sub bass here as well. Just give it a bit of feeling underneath on a change before it goes.
Back into the vocal. This time keeping the arp bass underneath for the movement. And this time around the riff doesn't come in on its own, it comes in underneath the vocal. Under filter. So you can feel it progressing, feel it moving all the way through. Again, the kick drum comes in. Now hopefully there's not a stage in the track where you kind of just stood there like a spare part wondering what's coming next. The whole, it's either building or going down again. And we're back in. Second time round the vocal comes back. And then towards the end of that is where you mix out. Keeping the off bass in for this section so it's still driving. And 9 times out of 10 on the last 16 bars you drop the bass out because when you're in the mix the bass of the next track will come in there. So you're now into the next track. I mean it's quite a standard generic arrangement, but for the style and pace of the music that we make, it works. Yeah. It works for us as DJs, and it benefits us as well because obviously we can make it and test it out the weekends and see whether it works or not.
And we have sort of kept our arrangement down to, although it says 5:30 there, it's actually around about, by the time we've moved it across at the front, probably about 4.5 to 5 minutes. And that's because it's so paced hardcore that it will get boring if it's just too long a track, and there's no point going into 7-8 minutes like the trance tracks would do because they're only 1/4-2, 1/4-4. So with hardcore we get it down so it's nice and short, it's all in, it's all happening, it's all quick, and then on to the next track. The one thing we do get asked about, both of us, is how we get our tracks so loud and so pumping. And there's a lot of people now actually starting to get them as loud, don't they, really? But,
yeah.
We were pretty much getting them louder than anybody at the start.
This is a mastering tool that we use predominantly for DJing purposes, really, for what we call a DJ tool, because it gets the volume up. It's probably a little over compressed, but we wouldn't necessarily press the record off the back of this master.
Yeah. But
in a club, it just, it really works. Just gives it something. Yeah. You just can't. It's just this invisible sound it gives it. It's like the bottom end, the top, it's nice and squashed,
there's
and
a
it's
lot
just
of pumping going on.
Yeah, it just gives it something.
And when you've got a DJ on before you and his tracks are nice and loud and the crowd are really sort of going for it, you want to make sure your track is loud.
The last thing you want is to come on with a low volume record after someone is just
yeah, because you could have the best track in the world, but if it's quiet, they're just going to be standing there looking at you, So I'll bypass it first. So there's our track, and with the mastering tool switched on. A bit of air and a bit of everything going on in there. If I take it back off, you can see the difference.
It sounds a little bit puny. I mean, if you didn't know it was there, you probably wouldn't notice any difference, but in a club, you can't come on without using a mastering tool like that.
Well, when we've done the track, we normally just export it as is. We get the levels as near as we can, really, don't we? And then, as is, it goes straight into the mastering tool. And then we're using a preset here we've made. We're not going to tell you exactly about that, but
it was basically off an existing preset. It's just tweaked,
and we've ordered it, yeah.
And That's all you're getting on that, I'm afraid. Yeah. But I mean, you know, you put a clip in, and some of them may be a little bit more bass heavy than others, so you can back it off or give it some, and the same on, you know, on the EQ on the tops, and maybe back a little bit of the compression off. But it's not a great deal of tweaking with that involved now. We've got the actual preset. But
I will say this is all the people that do ask us how we're getting our mixdowns like that. We go back to our mixdowns probably 8, 9, sometimes even 20 times.
Yeah.
We'll play them out, and if something's not quite right, we'll load it again, and it gets altered. And we'll keep doing that until we're happy with it, before it even gets near release.
So that's kind of how we're lucky with being able to DJ as well, because on a Friday afternoon we can finish a track, or we think we finished the track, and then we'll go and play it out. And you know, it's not until you've got it in the in the club environment and you've mixed it in against something that's already tried and tested, that you can think to yourself, oh, the vocal really needs to come up there, or that kick drum was, you know, not loud enough, it needs to come up, or there was too much bottom end on it, or anything like that. Little tweaks are happening all the time, and that's what's lucky these days with the fact that we can play off a CDJ. Is the fact that, you know, you're not wasting any money. Years ago we used to play off a dub plate, so we'd get all our records cut onto a dub plate at about £50 a time. And if you need to make some tweaks and you want to play it out again, you know, it's another 50 quid to get a dub and another 50 quid. Whereas now,
we never went back to mixdowns, and it would be get it as near as you can, then get it on a dub plate. Whereas now it is literally straight back in the next day, make that alteration.
We've been Breeds and Styles. I hope you enjoy the interview.
Thanks.